You have the ball when you're carrying the ball, you almost expect it, right?
Right.
You're expected, you brace for it most of the times, and then sometimes obviously you can avoid it. For like the hardest one,
Okay.
and I played against so many great defensive players.
Yeah.
He's the best ever. That's what everyone said about Barry Sanders. But here's the twist. The man who dominated the NFL for a decade walked away at just 30 years old, right when he was about to break the all-time rushing record. And it cost him. The Detroit Lions ordered him to repay $1.8 million of his signing bonus. So how does someone universally considered one of the greatest ever just vanish from the game, leaving millions on the table and facing serious financial penalties? Let's be clear, Barry Sanders was a generational talent who changed football forever. He played 10 seasons for the Detroit Lions from 1989 to 1998, and in that time, he completely redefined what it meant to be a running back. Sanders wasn't just good, he was a phenomenon who forced the entire league to rethink how they played defense. Before the NFL, Sanders destroyed college football at Oklahoma State. In 1988, he rushed for 2,128 yards and scored 37 touchdowns in just 11 games. That Heisman-winning season set records that still stand today. When the Lions drafted him third overall in 1989, he immediately proved he belonged, winning NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year after rushing for 1,170 yards. But what made Sanders truly special wasn't just his numbers, it was how he got them. Standing at just 5 feet 8 inches and 200 pounds, Sanders became the most elusive runner the NFL has ever seen. Defensive coaches called him a freak runner because his movement followed no predictable pattern. It was pure improvisation. He could reverse direction at will, making tacklers miss in ways that seemed impossible. Even Bill Belichick, one of the greatest defensive minds in football history, admitted that preparing for Sanders meant putting everybody at the point of attack because Sanders could hit every spot on the field. It didn't matter where the play started. Sanders was going to do whatever he wanted. His low center of gravity combined with his quickness and agility made him nearly impossible to tackle in the open field. Defenders would think they had the angle, only to watch Sanders cut back and leave them grasping at air. Now here's where it gets interesting. Sanders rushed for over 1,000 yards in every single one of his 10 professional seasons. Nobody had ever done that before. He averaged 127 rushing yards per season and nearly 100 yards per game. He earned 10 Pro Bowl selections, one for every year he played. In 1997, Sanders reached his absolute peak. He became only the third player ever to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season, finishing with 2,053 yards and an incredible 6.1 yards per carry. That season included 14 straight games with over 100 rushing yards, an NFL record that showcased his week-after-week dominance. The consistency Sanders displayed throughout his career was remarkable. Year after year, he delivered elite production, regardless of the circumstances around him. His ability to maintain such high efficiency over an entire decade separated him from almost every other player in history. Sanders won the 1997 NFL Most Valuable Player Award, sharing it with Brett Favre, and also earned 2 NFL Offensive Player of the Year awards in 1994 and 1997. These honors confirmed what everyone already knew. Sanders was operating on a different level than everyone else in the league. Which brings us to the debate that defined the 1990s. Who was better, Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith? These two running backs represented completely different styles, and comparing them reveals everything you need to know about what made Sanders so special. Let me ask you this. Which rival do you think Barry respected more, Emmitt Smith or Walter Payton? Drop your answer in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow the rest of this incredible story. Here's the statistical reality. Emmitt Smith played 15 seasons and holds the all-time rushing record with 18,355 yards. Sanders retired after just 10 seasons with 15,269 yards. But the real story is in the efficiency. Sanders averaged 5.0 yards per carry for his entire career. Smith averaged 4.2 yards per carry. That difference proves Sanders was the superior explosive runner. Sanders created more big plays and turned nothing into something on every single drive. Smith was reliable and consistent, the kind of runner who seemed to always get at least 4 yards, making the Dallas offense a first down machine. Advanced metrics show Smith had a slightly higher success rate of 49% compared to Sanders at 46%. Smith prioritized consistency. Sanders prioritized explosion. The contrast between these two approaches defined the entire decade and gave fans endless material for debate. But here's what you need to understand. Context matters. Emmitt Smith played for the dynastic Dallas Cowboys behind arguably the greatest offensive line in NFL history. That line featured multiple Pro Bowl talents like Nate Newton and Larry Allen. The Cowboys ran a slow, methodical offense designed to control the ball and wear down defenses. Smith was an elite runner who deserved his success, but the system around him was built perfectly for his style. Sanders, on the other hand, spent his entire career in Detroit with poor quarterbacks and often no Pro Bowl offensive linemen. Sanders had to create yards all by himself. The Lions ran a quick strike, up-tempo offense because they had to score fast, not because they could control the game. Sanders achieved his 5.0 yards per carry despite terrible support. Smith achieved his volume with elite support. This leads to an important conclusion. Had Sanders played behind that Dallas offensive line, analysts believe he would have been even more impressive. Projections using career-length comparisons suggest that if Sanders had played as many games as Smith, he would have rushed for over 21,800 yards, beating Smith by thousands. Sanders overcame a bad situation through pure individual brilliance. Smith maximized an elite situation through consistency and durability. Both were Hall of Fame careers, but the way they got there tells you everything about who had more talent. The organizational advantages Smith enjoyed cannot be ignored when making honest comparisons. Sanders operated in isolation, creating magic despite the lack of help around him. That ability to produce elite results without elite support is what separates the truly great from the merely very good. The fact that Sanders maintained such high efficiency while carrying the entire offensive burden shows just how special his talent really was. And Sanders didn't just dominate statistically. He set a standard that even his opponents admired. Warrick Dunn, a running back for the rival Tampa Bay Buccaneers, said he looked forward to playing against Sanders because Sanders challenged him and motivated him to play harder and better. That's the respect Sanders commanded across the league. He made everyone around him better, even the guys trying to stop him. The way Sanders approached the game inspired an entire generation of running backs who tried to emulate his style and creativity. But if Emmitt Smith was the toughest rival of Sanders' generation, Walter Payton was the historical benchmark Sanders had to measure himself against. The debate over the greatest running back of all time usually comes down to three names: Jim Brown, who retired after 9 dominant seasons, Emmitt Smith because of his all-time records, and the duo of Barry Sanders and Walter Payton. Comparing Sanders to Payton requires looking beyond pure running ability and examining total offensive value. Walter Payton, known as Sweetness, was the prototype for the complete running back. His legacy was built on versatility. He could run, catch, block, and even pass. Payton retired with 16,726 rushing yards and a 4.4 yards per carry average. He also had 492 receptions for 4,538 receiving yards and threw 8 career touchdown passes as a non-quarterback. Payton could do everything. His willingness to block for teammates and contribute in every facet of the offense made him the ultimate team player. Sanders was fundamentally different. He was a pure runner. While he caught 352 passes for 2,121 yards, his skill set was overwhelmingly dominated by his rushing ability. Blocking was frequently identified as a relative weakness compared to Payton. Many analysts, including Emmitt Smith himself, place Payton as the best running back of all time based on overall functional utility. The distinction is simple. Sanders was the superior pure runner because of his explosive 5.0 yards per carry compared to Payton's 4.4 yards per carry. But Payton was the superior overall football player whose complete skill set made him a foundational asset for any team trying to win. Payton's 13-season career and ability to perform consistently across all phases of the game give him a major advantage in the debate over total impact. Like Sanders, Payton spent much of his career carrying a struggling Chicago Bears team. Sanders' 10 seasons in Detroit were filled with organizational chaos and a lack of playoff success. Although he helped the Lions win their first postseason game since 1958 back in 1991, the team's consistent failure to build a winner became a major factor in his decision to eventually retire. The difference between Sanders and Payton comes down to how you define greatness. Payton's comprehensive skills provided more functional utility for coaches building an offense. Sanders' value was his unmatched ability to create yards through improvisation and explosive plays. Sanders is celebrated for his beauty and efficiency. Payton is celebrated for his complete mastery of every part of the position. The comparison between these two legends highlights different philosophies about what makes a player truly great. Now let's talk about the paradox that defined Sanders' entire career. Sanders retired as the all-time leader in negative rushing yards with approximately 114 yards lost. That's a staggering number. It means a significant portion of his runs were complete failures that hurt his team's drive. But here's the crazy part. Despite those frequent negative plays, Sanders still maintained his 5.0 yards per carry average. How is that even possible? The answer reveals the genius of Barry Sanders. He operated what analysts call a high-variance system. His ability to maintain elite efficiency despite massive losses meant that his successful runs were disproportionately explosive and game-changing. He turned plays designed for losses or minimal gains into massive breakaway runs. Sanders generated yardage when traditional blocking schemes completely failed. His style was independent of the offensive system. He could run from any alignment, and defenses had no idea where he was going. That unpredictability forced revolutionary defensive schemes designed specifically to contain him. The mathematical reality of his career proves that his explosive plays far outweighed his occasional losses, creating a net positive that few runners have ever matched. The willingness to take risks and dance in the backfield sometimes resulted in losses, but those same moves created the big plays that defined his career. This brings us to the most defining moment of Sanders' career: the retirement. In 1999, Sanders was only 407 yards away from breaking Walter Payton's all-time rushing record. After rushing for 1,091 yards in his final season, everyone believed Sanders would break the record in just one more year, but he didn't. Sanders announced his retirement via fax on the eve of training camp, shocking the entire football world. He was 30 years old and still playing at an elite level. Why would he walk away? The announcement left fans, teammates, and league executives stunned. Nobody saw it coming. Sanders explained his decision was rooted in two things. First, he lost his passion and motivation. The Detroit Lions' chronic losing and declining team production made it impossible for him to keep going. He refused to sacrifice his physical and mental health for more seasons when the team had no chance of winning. Second, Sanders valued his personal well-being and privacy over everything else. He turned down millions in endorsement deals during his career, famously saying he valued privacy over endorsements. Walking away from the rushing record was consistent with his values. Sanders later said he never valued the record so much that he thought it was worth his dignity or Walter's dignity to pursue it, amid all the media and marketing attention. That decision cost him. The Lions ordered him to repay $1.8 million of his signing bonus for breaking his contract. The financial penalty was substantial, but Sanders never showed regret about his choice. His principles mattered more than money or records, a rarity in professional sports where athletes often chase every milestone available. But here's why that decision cemented his legacy. By retiring at his peak, Sanders avoided the physical decline that comes when running backs play into their mid-30s. His entire 10-year career is represented by that elite 5 yards per carry average. Had he kept playing and suffered the typical drop in efficiency most runners face, his statistical superiority would have disappeared. The belief that Sanders could have exceeded 21,000 career yards amplifies his reputation as the most gifted runner ever. His voluntary exit created a mystique. He became an image of supreme, untainted talent that chose personal conviction over chasing records. Emmitt Smith played 5 more seasons and eventually broke the record through longevity. Sanders chose a different path. He measured success by performance and personal fulfillment, not statistical totals. His decision to prioritize his own values over external expectations showed a level of integrity rarely seen in professional sports. The retirement also drew comparisons to Jim Brown, another legendary runner who walked away at his peak after only 9 seasons. Like Brown, Sanders left fans wondering what could have been, while simultaneously preserving a perfect image of dominance. The choice to leave at the top ensures that Sanders will always be remembered at his absolute best, never declining, never struggling, just pure excellence frozen in time. So, where does Barry Sanders rank in NFL history? It depends entirely on what you value. If you measure greatness by pure efficiency and elusiveness, Sanders is untouched. His 5.0 yards per carry average achieved without great organizational support, and through a volatile, explosive running style that forced entire defenses to adapt, makes him the standard. If you measure greatness by all-purpose utility and completeness, Walter Payton holds the edge because of his superior blocking, receiving, and overall versatility. If you measure greatness by longevity, volume, and championships, Emmitt Smith is the leader because he leveraged superior support to accumulate the all-time record. Each standard produces a different answer, which is why the debate continues today. The beauty of Sanders' career is that it forces us to examine what we truly value in athletic greatness. Barry Sanders' legacy is improvised greatness. He delivered sustained, transcendent production for a decade through an unmatched mastery of movement. His decision to retire at 30 while giving up the rushing record ensured his statistical integrity stayed perfect and solidified his reputation as an athlete whose talent went beyond the league's obsession with records and commercial success. Sanders retired as one of the most respected players of his era. He left behind a highlight reel that remains unmatched in its display of agility and genius. That earned him a permanent spot on the NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team. He faced the toughest competition his generation had to offer. Emmitt Smith pushed him every single year through their intense rivalry. Walter Payton set the historical standard he had to chase and ultimately chose to respect rather than surpass. And even rivals like Warwick Dunn acknowledged that competing against Sanders made them better players. Sanders didn't just dominate, he elevated everyone around him. That's the mark of true greatness. He walked away on his own terms with his dignity intact and his legacy untouchable. The respect he showed for the game, for his opponents, and for himself defines who he was as both a player and a person. He's the the best ever, and he proved it by choosing respect over records.